What's the enemy? Brian barked, grabbing a soldier loading a weapon. Demons, my lord, the soldier gasped, his breaths ragged between frantic reloads. A horde of them descended from the snow peaks. Brian swore. Why now, of all times? A thought struck Edith like a bolt of lightning. Could that muffled hum be some kind of demonic call, she blurted, remembering a passage from the king's tome. It spoke of a sound, unheard by humans, that resonated with certain creatures. Some even used it to communicate. Could this be a demonic signal, summoning more of their kind? As if misfortune followed orders, another soldier burst in. My lord! Lady Maggie spotted a fresh demonic trail heading east, towards Misty Forest. They seem to be flanking the snow mountains, just like we feared, heading straight for Neverwinter. Brian's jaw slackened. What? This can't. My lord, the soldier pressed urgently. What are our orders? Brian muttered incoherently, his face etched with a chilling sweat. Disappointment flickered in Edith's eyes. A leader, in her estimation, should never display such open bewilderment, especially in front of his troops. Gentlemen, Edith cut in, her voice firm, this isn't as complex as it seems. Firstly, recall the 1st Army station near the snow mountain. Their presence at the cave entrance will significantly shrink the battlefield. We'll only need a handful of machine guns to hold the demonic horde back. Brian swiveled towards her, taking a moment to regain his composure. Why yes, precisely, he stammered. Secondly, Edith continued, her voice clear and calm, Lady Maggie should contact the king for reinforcements. Our supplies rely on the Redwater River, and losing the entrenched passage cripples our ability to resupply. The beasts can't swim, so hold on to the cement ships. Deploy a dozen men with them to both harass the enemy and guide any incoming aid. Lady Sylvie can handle the cave ceiling, Edith added. As a precaution, gather everyone's god stones and bury them at the sentry post, a safeguard against surprise attacks. Finally, send the Tequila Witches to reinforce Betty. With their combined forces, she can march south along the river and search for Agatha and the others. Edith's composed demeanor settled the growing unease in the room. The witches must reach Betty with haste, she emphasized. If my hunch is right, the source of that strange sound holds the key to our predicament. Brian took a deep breath. Understood. We'll proceed according to your plan. Ugh, I feel like I was tossed around in a giant snot-filled sock. Agatha sputtered, heaving and wiping her mouth. Disgusting doesn't even begin to describe it. Nightingale materialized gracefully from her mist, untouched by the slimy ordeal. Couldn't have phrased it any better, could you? She remarked, surveying the mucus-coated witches. Thank goodness Fran reacted quickly and sealed the cave entrance. Otherwise, we'd all be in a much worse predicament. Fran, pale and shaky, mumbled, sorry if I acted rashly. But Agatha was too busy dry-heaving to respond. Lightning, ever the optimist, shrugged and wiped a glob of slime from her hair, sniffing it curiously. Being swallowed by a giant worm? Now that's an experience no explorer can boast about. Talk about a unique adventure. Elena rolled her eyes. Don't get carried away, Lightning. For us who can feel and smell, she said pointedly at Agatha, even a fleeting encounter with this foul stench is an unpleasant souvenir. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gods' punishment witches. All right, Agatha croaked, her voice hoarse. Let's move on. What's our next move? A tense silence descended. The memory of the horrifying event played on their minds. Despite Fran's warning, the instinct to look at the source of the strange buzzing had been too strong. Now, they all bore the consequences, having glimpsed the monstrosity, a horrifying being with 10,000 glowing red eyes. They believed it to be the multi-eyed demon from atop the black stone tower, the one swallowed by the giant worm. But this one was different. The eyes were far more numerous, spread across a seemingly flattened, stretched body. It was a horrifying image none of them would soon forget. Meanwhile, the witches endured a harrowing ordeal within Fran's belly. The creature's frantic maneuvers sent them tumbling, nausea rising in their throats. Relief washed over them, at least they were all alive. First things first, Elena said, turning to Fran. How'd you end up down here?
The water must have worn down the rock over time, Fran mumbled weakly.
The passage just gave way when I was turning around. Everything happens so fast. 1 minute I'm moving, the next I'm falling. Hit something, then darkness. Woke up being carried by these invisible worms, and here I am. Elena raised an eyebrow. Deposited like a package, then? We are fortunate, wouldn't you say?
Lucky we weren't lunch, Fran muttered, then winced.
Though, speaking of bad timing, I accidentally looked up when I was trying to escape. Agatha's voice deepened. Did you see the watchful magic eye?
Not sure, Fran admitted. It definitely saw me the moment our eyes met, but it wasn't like any multi-eyed demon I've ever seen. This one was much, much bigger. A particularly ripe gust of air escaped Fran, causing the witches to wrinkle their noses.
Sorry, Fran mumbled.
Since Elena and the others lost their sense of smell long ago, I figured it wouldn't matter.
Agatha, holding her breath for dear life, managed to force out, Did you manage to get a good look at this creature?
Fran trailed off, searching for the right words. The thing I saw, it defied description.
Imagine a botched experiment, a flattened mass of viscera crudely stitched onto the multi-eyed demon's body.
The two parts didn't fit, like a grotesque patchwork. Between them, fleshy tendrils writhed, living worms or extensions of the creature, I couldn't tell. But the point is, this gut mass dwarfed the multi-eyed demon, bigger even than the fearful beast of hell.
Nightingale frowned. Consuming demons, perhaps? This is no ordinary hybrid beast. Escape first, analysis later, Elena declared, patting Fran's massive head. Next time, details after a warning, all right? Fran offered a weak rumble in response. Can you move us? Elena continued. Fran shook her head. Exhausted.
Used all my reserves getting us here.
Need fuel, food. Lightning piped up. What if we offer our remaining rations?
100 feet of tunnel won't get us anywhere, Elena sighed, running a hand through her hair.
Looks like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, wait and suffocate, or fight our way out and risk becoming monster kibble. Agatha's voice remained steady. Staying put isn't an option. This space is too cramped, we'll run out of air in less than a day.
Even if Sylvie finds us, they'll need to clear those beasts before they can reach us.
She added grimly, remember, they have those damn worm carriers too. A heavy silence descended upon the gods' punishment witches. Breaking out now means facing a horde of those things, one of them muttered. None of us stand a chance against that many.
The weight of the situation settled on them.
And what about Fran? Another chimed in. She's stuck, defenseless against all those monsters. Nightingale, ever the pragmatist, saw an opportunity to slip away.
I'll scout the situation outside, she declared, clearly opting out of the coming debate.
Fran, surprising everyone, spoke up. Don't worry about me, ladies. Tequila witches ain't afraid of a little death. I'll always be one of them, no matter what became of me.
Speaking of which, she wiggled her body slightly, I might have something that could be helpful in our little predicament. With a series of strained heaves, she expelled several metal crates, their surfaces slick with a sticky residue.
What are?
Agatha began, but Fran cut her off. First army supplies, she coughed. They were too heavy to carry the usual way, so they begged me to swallow them.
Consider it a favor to a friend.
Agatha cautiously pried open the crates, revealing an assortment of shovels, spades, and rolls of wire mesh. Her curiosity piqued, she reached for the final crate. This one felt noticeably heavier, and upon opening it, Agatha's breath caught.
Inside, nestled amongst shock-absorbing straw, lay a dozen wooden boxes emblazoned with a chilling label, Second Chemistry Plant, Sample 64, Qualified. A jolt of recognition shot through her. Weren't those samples from the facility that handled most of the nitrogen produced by decomposition? In simpler terms, explosives. Crack the mountain? Earth itself? Elena's eyes bulged after Agatha's terse explanation of the explosives.
Fury laced her voice.
What were they thinking, shoving these things in Fran's stomach? What if they went off inside her? Fran's immense form shuddered at the image.
These are lab samples, hair trigger volatile, Agatha clarified, rummaging through the box and producing a bag filled with copper piping.
Not these field explosives.
They need these pipes assembled into proper containers before they'll detonate from impact or heat.
Burn them? Shouldn't something that loud be super unstable? Looks like a brick. How do we use them? Stick the pipe in and boom? Who's crazy enough to do that? Agatha's brow furrowed.
Her knowledge, like the tequila witches, came from the king's basic firearms training. Detonation specifics were beyond them.
The one with the red mark, that's the detonator, you need a flame to set it off, Lightning chimed in, her voice professional.
The blue one has a pull string. I remember something about a yellow electric detonator, but this bag only has red and blue.
Agatha's surprise was audible. How do you know that?
Lightning smirked, tapping her nose.
Explorer, remember?
I practically lived at the First Army's weapons testing grounds.
A tense silence followed.
Elena, ever the strategist, broke it.
So, bury them at the cave mouth, blow our way out? Or scatter them as we retreat and carry Fran? She eyed the witches.
10 of us should be able to move her if the explosions hold back the beasts.
Leave me behind, Fran mumbled, her voice thick with despair. Absolutely not. Elena snapped. Sacrifice is a part of our path, but we never abandon our own. Remember Lady Eleanor's words, every witch holds equal value.
The other witches murmured their agreement, a chorus of unwavering loyalty.
Neither plan will work, Lightning interjected, her voice laced with frustration. One bag in this cramped cave would turn us all into paste. In a larger space, it wouldn't be strong enough.
These are demolition tools, not weapons.
The blast and heat only reach about 10 paces. A heavy silence descended.
The once fearsome explosion seemed trivial against the swarming horde summoned by the monstrous entity above. Escape seemed impossible unless they thinned the enemy ranks significantly.
Nightingale, ever the enigma, broke the silence.
We take down their leader.
The dome monster? Elena scoffed. We can't even reach it, let alone fight it. And even if you could fly, Agatha added before Lightning could protest, this is no safe haven where reinforcements are a prayer away. These hybrid beasts can fly, Lightning.
You'd be weighed down, your speed and altitude crippled.
They'd swarm you before you got close. I wasn't suggesting Lightning, Nightingale countered, her words measured. This bag of explosives. I'll get it into the monster's mouth myself, assuming it has one. Agatha scoffed. You? Don't be absurd.
Your mist can't cloak you from magic eyes.
It sees what you see. Seeing thee doesn't guarantee its minions will, Nightingale countered. I can slip past them, even if ordered to intercept.
Besides, she added with a sly smile, the mist offers more than invisibility.
Agatha sputtered a rebuttal, but it died on her lips as a cacophony erupted from the rock face.
It resembled 1,000 cicadas chomping leaves, or perhaps gravel grinding under immense pressure.
The witches' faces fell.
The sound was all too familiar.
Blast them, Elena muttered, her voice hardened.
They're sending a worm carrier.
Prepare yourselves.
A worm carrier wasn't a major threat in itself, but it signaled the arrival of a relentless onslaught, demonic beasts pouring forth from the creature's digestive tract.
Leave this to me, Nightingale declared, a flicker of confidence in her eyes.
Back in the Witch Cooperation Association days, before the old King City fell, my name was known throughout the central region. She deftly packed 4 bags of explosives into a satchel, cinching it tight on her back. They called me Shadow Killer then.
Hold on. Agatha began, but Nightingale cut her off with a reassuring wink. Relax.
I'll send that abomination packing before it burrows its way to us.
Before Agatha could voice further concerns, Nightingale melted into thin air, the last glimpse a cocky thumbs-up dissolving into the mist. Nightingale's hunch proved correct. Most of the demonic hybrids were blind to her presence in the mist.
They clambered ineffectually at the cliff face, their attempts to reach her as futile as arrows arcing wildly off course. Even the flying beasts, circling menacingly overhead, swooped past her in a blur, unable to lock onto their unseen target. As long as she kept moving, their attacks remained clumsy and disjointed. Only one type of beast posed a threat: mutated creatures with wickedly curved forelimbs. These grotesque abominations, propelled by their powerful limbs, clung to the rock face with a spider-like tenacity. Coached by the unseen monstrosity above, they swarmed the dome of the cave, aiming to intercept Nightingale and her suicidal mission. She knew she had to eliminate them before facing the true mastermind. The vast dome had become her personal battlefield, a stark contrast to her solitary wanderings in the mist all those years ago. Back then, she had been a prisoner, forced to serve her cruel aristocratic family until Wendy's intervention. This solitude, however, felt vastly different. Here, there was no boredom, no simmering resentment. She had volunteered for this perilous mission, driven not by coercion but by a fierce loyalty to her companions. Her heart brimmed with the unwavering resolve to protect them. Nightingale wasn't truly alone. She wore Soraya's protective suit, a testament to their unlikely friendship. Tucked away in her bag were Agatha's potent explosives, each one a symbol of their shared ingenuity. And finally, a gun engraved with the words "to Veronica" rested on her hip, a constant reminder of the bond she shared with the woman who had become her queen. The multi-eyed demon's influence was unmistakable. These normally fractious beasts, prone to infighting, now launched coordinated, relentless attacks, a chilling testament to the demon's control. Nightingale's resolve hardened. Why this monstrosity lurked within the Great Snow Mountain instead of assaulting Neverwinter remained a mystery, but a demonic force this potent under a commander posed a dire threat to Roland and his kingdom. The furious current told a grim tale of their unlikely survival. Reloading was out of the question, the demonic assault was relentless. With a practiced movement, she holstered the pistol and leaped over an unseen beast, landing behind it just as a swarm descended. With a flick of her wrist, she pulled the beast into the swirling mist. The creature recoiled in shock, its vision replaced by the monochrome world. Nightingale unleashed a torrent of magic from her fingertips. Every beast foolish enough to attack the first one followed it into the swirling oblivion. With each addition, her power reserves dwindled, approaching depletion. A single white strand, part of the dome that defined her mist world, snaked towards her. It was her moment. The increasing number of beasts had strained the mist's stability, draining her power. These tethers, once tools for swift traversal, now presented a deadly opportunity. The white strand whipped out, catching the beasts in its path. They froze in place momentarily. It was as if they'd vanished, leaving a chilling emptiness in the colorless sky. Then, they reappeared, grotesquely altered. Their lower halves remained where they stood, while their upper bodies materialized several meters away, as if a single, brutal slash had severed them in midair. Suspended for a horrifying heartbeat, the bisected bodies rained down into the lake. A sudden shift. Nightingale's vision cleared, the distorted world of the mist settling back into the harsh reality of the cavern. The demonic tide faltered, the frenzy replaced by a chilling unease. The creatures recoiled, their mindless aggression replaced by a primal fear. These monstrous hybrids were afraid. The unseen master above shrieked its fury, a thrashing of tentacles against the rock, but it fell on deaf ears. Only 3 of the sickle-limbed demons remained, their attacks half-hearted, fear overriding their programming. The defensive line was shattered, the path ahead clear. Nightingale, her magic reserves dwindling, pushed forward, her focus on the monstrous entity at the cave's apex. As she drew closer, the truth of Fran's words hit her with a sickening impact. This wasn't a creature, it was an abomination. A grotesque amalgamation of exposed viscera, a tangled mess of vascular tubes, writhing tentacles, and pulsating organs that defied classification. The sight was repulsive, a testament to a horrifying, unnatural creation. Tossing the explosives into its mouth was clearly out of the question. Her gaze darted to a cluster of pulsing, fleshy spheres embedded within the monstrosity. Whether vital organs or not, they glowed with a malevolent luminescence, radiating a potent magic signature. She surmised that detonating the explosives there would inflict far more damage. It was a gamble, a desperate lunge for a single, decisive strike.
This wasn't a battle, it was an all-or-nothing sprint to oblivion for one of them. Nightingale pressed closer, the sheer scale of the monstrosity overwhelming. Her actions were a blur.
Fuse yanked, a green-smoked explosive shoved into the pulsating meatballs along with the backpack itself, a desperate heave back into the swirling mist, she contorted, clinging upside down. With a final, powerful push, she launched herself away from the monstrosity, plummeting towards the subterranean lake like a desperate arrow. An unexpected thought flickered across her mind, Roland. During their gunpowder testing days, he would invariably turn his back on the blast site, muttering about true warriors never looking at an explosion. A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips.
Not today, Roland.
Today, she craved the spectacle of the monstrosity's demise, the satisfaction of witnessing its grotesque form ripped asunder. Just as the symphony of the underground river meeting the cavern's lake reached a crescendo, a crimson glow erupted on the cave ceiling. In this realm of perpetual darkness, the light blazed with the intensity of a sudden sunrise. The shadows recoiled, revealing the previously unseen ripples on the lake's surface. Then, a thunderous roar shattered the silence. A heavy splash echoed through the cavern. Nightingale had hit the water. The world descended into a surreal quiet, punctuated only by the frantic pounding of her heart.
But Nightingale was a woman of foresight.
With a final, desperate surge of her dwindling magic, she summoned the mist. Whirlwind tendrils, white against the churning water, materialized and offered a lifeline. Like climbing an ethereal staircase, she hauled herself up, each movement a testament to her fading strength. By the time she clawed her way to the surface, her magic reserves were utterly depleted.
The backlash was immediate and brutal.
A searing pain stabbed through her head, accompanied by a wave of dizziness. Her limbs trembled uncontrollably, her body a marionette with severed strings. As she dragged herself towards the shore, her vision blurred at the edges. The last sights to register before succumbing to unconsciousness were a monstrous worm bursting through the cave wall and a golden figure streaking towards her, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. Fran's voice, usually laced with dry humor, trembled with concern.
Nightingale? Is she all right?
Agatha knelt beside the unconscious witch, her brow furrowed in concentration.
Magic depletion. Nothing life-threatening. Get her out of here, Fran. We need to move, now. Elena, a newfound respect burning in her eyes after witnessing Nightingale's bravery, cradled the unconscious witch.
I'll carry her. Lightning, ever the pragmatist, frowned at the struggling monster.
Shouldn't we finish it off? It doesn't look dead. Agatha's voice held a weary authority. Dying beasts are the most unpredictable. You can only carry one bag of explosives. Besides, with the first army alerted, it's a waiting game. It'll succumb soon enough.
Lightning grumbled her assent, a flicker of frustration in her eyes. Just as they prepared to leave, a guttural shriek tore through the cavern. The lake, rippling under the dying embers of the explosion, lurched violently. Through the swirling water, a monstrous skeletal form erupted, its gaping maw lined with rows of razor-sharp ribs.
It emerged with unsettling ease, defying the current's fury.
The weakened demon, its tentacles slack with agony, relinquished its grip on the cave ceiling and plummeted towards the skeletal jaws. The lake churned with the force of its descent, sending waves crashing against the shore and momentarily reversing the underground river's flow. The skeletal maw clamped shut, encasing the demon in a gruesome embrace, before sinking back into the depths. A flurry of reports and messages detailing the Great Snow Mountain expedition reached Neverwinter over the next 3 days.
Roland's heart lurched when he learned of Nightingale's magic depletion and subsequent collapse during the battle. Thankfully, the news arrived with an addendum from Maggie assuring him of the witch's recovery.
These results surprised Roland.
If the multi-eyed monstrosity were simply a mindless beast inhabiting the ruins, its destructive tendencies wouldn't be entirely perplexing.
But clearly, this was no mere animal.
He couldn't shake the memory of some unseen force within the Great Snow Mountain directing the devouring worms to swallow Agatha's laboratory and the Blackstone Pagoda in Devil's Town.
Such actions weren't driven solely by hunger. The expedition's report also mentioned the discovery of both human and demonic forms trapped within the strange insect eggs. These facts painted a grim picture, an unknown enemy meticulously gathering information on its future adversaries in the looming battle of divine will. Roland's gaze lingered on Soraya's photographs of the ruined city within the Great Snow Mountain. His brow furrowed as he studied an image of the multi-eyed monstrosity just before it plunged into the cavern lake.
Hundreds of eyes, once blank and emotionless, now seemed to blaze with a chilling resentment. Roland looked up from his desk, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. The Great Snow Mountain expedition had only just concluded, and the reports were still fresh on his mind. He hadn't anticipated Lady Pasha seeking an audience so soon.